So I got invited to participate in the Zwift Games, which is one of the biggest virtual bike racing competitions in the world, over $100,000 on the line. And I was super excited, and then I got really sick just a couple weeks before the event, losing all my fitness. And on top of that, the truth is, virtual racing is just a completely different craft than the in real life racing that I'm used to. And I'm just not that good at it. Fortunately, I have somebody on today who is very good at Zwift racing. Somebody who's going to help us all become better Zwift racers, and that is Brian Duffy. Brian, welcome back to the channel.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. Excited to be here.
There we go. Stage 2, Zwift Games. Always tough starts in Zwift. It's just across the board, right? It doesn't really matter what the stage is. There always seems to be a tough first few seconds in Zwift.
It's on like Donkey Kong, as Dave Talent would always say. But yeah, the starts are very hard in Zwift, and you might be wondering, like, which world am I in right now? I had this weird glitch in this game. It sounds like a few other riders did as well, where it was like a hybrid between. There we go, flying in outer space, a hybrid between McCurry Islands, and this is, I think, supposed to be Scotland. So some weird glitch, but fortunately, I've ridden this course so many times. I was just envisioning in my head where I should actually be, as opposed to the visuals that were displaying on the screen.
Level 100. I don't understand, like, how people get to
level 100. It's a lot of riding staring at the screen.
Okay, but speaking about these tough starts, which, by the way, this one was actually a little bit tame compared to some other Zwift races I've done. The race overall was incredibly difficult, but this start was kind of tame. How do you get warmed up for this sort of thing? Because Zwift starts are not the same as in real life, like crit racing starts that I'm used to. Do you do a proper, like, is there any structure to your warm-up routine? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. This race is a little bit unique because it was about 45 minutes following the first race. But for the first race, for the bigger races, I'll usually try to do about 20 to 30 minutes, just easy riding with a couple surges, just some leg openers to really just get ready for this kind of start. Because it is a little bit more full throttle for the first minute or so, and then it calms down a bit, but it really depends on the race. As we talked about in the last episode, like, the pace is pretty hot the entire time. There will be moments that are tamer, but nothing's ever super, super slow. But yeah, just nothing too structured or intentional, but just want to keep the legs moving. Now for this race, it's an interesting one when you have these back-to-back races, because you had about 45 to 60 minutes, which is longer than usual. And really, I just kept the legs moving. I was riding like 50 watts for 40 minutes in between races, just to keep the blood circulating and kind of shuffle out some of the lactic acid. That's a good point. Like, this is just shortly after stage 1. If you guys missed that, it's already up on the channel. But moving the legs is exactly what I did. I'm curious to know also about your nutrition, like going into the first stage and then in between, and then also, are you fueling actually during the stage? But before we get there, I want to actually skip forward a little bit to the intermediate sprint point in this stage, because there are points on offer for the overall. Let's see how that shakes out. Okay, we're about halfway through this race, almost 12 minutes into this race, and there are sprint points coming up this little riser. Now, as a reminder, Zwift Games it's a points race. Each individual stage is a scratch race, but you are accumulating points to the overall winner. So every one of these little sprint points is consequential. Now, this one's up a hill. You're positioned towards the front. Are you going for this intermediate sprint? And so similar logic to last race, if you saw the first episode, so many more points offered at the end of the race. And although you can, pick up some spots by getting points here if you get top 3, just the energy, the effort required to get them, I just felt like would cost too much for the end of the race relative to what I thought I could get here. Now, one of my teammates does go for it. I think he might get top 3, but it's kind of boom or bust. If you time it a little bit too early, you might do a lot of effort and come away with nothing. So it is a good finish for me. If I had gone through it, I like the minute-long gradual declines. It turns it into a 1-minute power effort. But here, I'm definitely upping my effort, but I'm just trying to stay connected to the leaders of the group and make sure that no one gets away. Sometimes immediately after these intermediate preems, someone will launch a counterattack, which I kind of thought this individual was doing here on the downhill. And you just want to be alert so that if somebody does make that move, you can get on the wheel.
So that was Brian doing like 9 watts per kilogram for that 1 minute effort or so.
not going for the sprint. That shows
Not
you the
going for
level
it.
of effort. Yeah, it's
Exactly.
wild how many.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, okay. So, speaking of watts per kilogram, that's second all important per kilogram. It's per unit weight. That's the gold standard here for success in Zwift racing when it comes to just like being the fastest. All right, we can talk more about team strategy and that stuff, and we will. But there is a weigh-in. We talked a little bit about this in the first episode, but I love how Zwift makes this very official. Like within an hour before the start of the first race, you have to do an official weigh-in with like a calibration, and the power meters are calibrated, and you have to take a video of your height. Like it's very detail oriented to make sure it's fair play. Now, with that in mind, are you mindful of your weight? Like, are you like a boxer? Are you trying to cut weight going into some of these events?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. So you have to have the weigh-in because it's a big determinant of your velocity, as it's your power. So on the power, we have to actually record on 2 independent devices, and we have to do some like equipment testing prior to the race even starting. And then for weigh-in, you want to make sure that your weight and your height are submitted correctly because these are all big determinants of your velocity, which dictates the winner. So it has to be fair play, and that will bring with it credibility. The process itself has evolved a lot. It used to be 24 hours. So 24 hours prior to the start of the race, you had a live video yourself weighing in. People were really abusing that, doing the boxing thing, like cutting tons of weight, going to sauna, etc. It was then moved to 2 hours, and actually this was the debut of 1 hour. So we're trying to get it closer and closer. So you do have to find that fine balance. Of course, there are some things that you can do to just manage your weight, but you can't do it at the expense of your power and showing up
Right.
for the race with all of your energy. So for me personally, like things that you can just keep an eye on, at the end of the day, your body's like 60 to 70% water. So I'll certainly cut back on like sodium intake for a couple of days prior to the race, just so that you're not retaining as much of the water that you're consuming, and it's just kind of flowing through your body a little bit. So there's tactics like that which can help, a couple kilograms or whatever here or there, that doesn't sacrifice too much. But certainly some people will try to just sweat it out for a long period of time prior to the weigh-in. It's just that can certainly come at the expense of having the legs.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly don't want to come in like dehydrated or overly dehydrated because your performance
Exactly.
falls off a cliff once you
Yeah.
lose. But like I did a ride today, for example. I just got back inside from a long outside ride, and I lost. Even though I was fueling properly, I was drinking a ton of water. I still lost like 8 pounds over the course of this long ride, and like.
Mm-hmm.
There is wiggle room there for sure. What an interesting dynamic, though, because
Yeah.
you don't want to be overhydrated, right? For the weigh-in, because you don't want to carry unnecessary weight. Same is true for outside. There's a balance,
Yeah.
like you said, between optimal performance, with maybe suboptimal hydration, or like that's different for everybody. Kind of an interesting
Yeah, it's
dynamic.
different for
But then
everybody.
making it an hour before your race doesn't give you a lot of wiggle room, and I think that's good. Safety of the
I think
riders.
it's
You don't
good.
want. You don't want
Yeah.
boxers like cutting. One thing that there's a Discord for all the athletes that get invited to these, and I'm new
Yeah.
to all this, but it was funny. I saw some comments going around like, "Hey, the hour thing's cool, but like, we're cutting it close because it's not just you go weigh yourself. You have to get a calibrated weight that goes on your calibrated scale. You have to take an uninterrupted video that gets published to YouTube in an unlisted format. Like it's official. Like I don't want to bury you
Mhm.
guys in the details of it, but just like keep in mind, like I like what they're doing to prioritize fair play, and we're still having these weird these weird graphics
Yeah.
glitches, but we're getting pretty close to the end here. 3.1 miles to go. You have this. Another thing I found fascinating, we touched on in the last video, is like you're not out there just, hey, I hope my teammate does well. Hey, he went it for the preem. Like that's cool. Like we didn't talk about that. You guys have a plan coming in. You have a private Discord server in your ear. You have a DS. Like I want to hear more about the team stuff going on. This fascinates me.
Yeah, I mean, we're a well-oiled machine. So I'm on Next Esports, and no bias here, but I think we're the best team in Zwift cycling. The higher level Zwift racing used to be much more team-based, and that was a lot of fun because it really just bring us together as one. And we won the Zwift, series championship, a couple different times. In one year in particular, which absolutely dominated it. And And so we have a group of there's probably like upwards of 40 men now. We have a women's team as well. Started that a couple years ago, which is awesome. And we're just a really tight knit group that challenges each other each day, but also just really good friends. But when it comes to racing, we've been doing this now for so many years, and we pay attention to the details. We recon the courses. We understand what's going to happen. We have a checklist of all the things you have to do prior to the race, ensuring everybody has done their weigh-ins, doing their dual recordings, that sort of thing. But then as far as in the race, we understand that certain course profiles lend themselves better to certain riders, and everybody has different interests. Some might have a good shot, some might not. And at the end of the day, what we care about is our team doing well and our other riders doing well. So, you don't have to say anything, but riders will willingly, kind of sacrifice themselves to an extent to help their teammate. So there's just common things like you would find outdoors. Like if somebody likes their chances in a break, that rider will go to the break. They might communicate to us in the Discord channel or the phone conversation that we're on that they're up, and we know, nobody's following that or chasing down that move. We're letting that rider have that chance. Or we'll coordinate, counterattacks, playing off one another, or just like ride to set somebody else up. If a competitor breaks away and we know that he's a viable threat, we might have someone who will just kind of go to the front of the peloton and push the pace and make sure that it kind of gets reconnected, or maybe bridges up to that breakaway. So there's all sorts of strategy. It's all just about communication. You just have to be calling out what's happening, making sure everybody's aware of where each other are, and that's where a DS could be really helpful. Our one of the leaders of our team, Greg Abbott, tends to be our DS, and he's very attentive to what's going on throughout the race. Because as you can see, it can get a little bit disorienting with all the different avatars and riders as to what is actually happening. So it's helpful to have somebody in your ear with instruction.
So let's talk power-ups. That's one thing we didn't mention in the last video. Obviously really important, and they level the playing field here in these high-level races as well, meaning everybody gets one power-up. It's the same power-up at the beginning of the race. Use it when you see best fit. What was the power-up in this race?
Yeah, I think the power-up in this race was actually it was a draft. It was a draft. So yeah, there's a variety of different power-ups. This one, I think it's 30 or 40 seconds long, and it basically just doubles or triples the drafting effect when it's activated if you're behind a rider. So the key to it being effective is being behind someone. You don't want to be breaking off to the front with your draft power up, as compared to some of the other ones like the arrow power up, which makes your arrow profile a bit more advantageous. There you want to be off the front. So this one was probably less interesting, but basically what it says is that you wanted to time your sprint until the last second in order to kind of get the full use of the draft effect. That if you were kind of tucked in until the final handful of meters, you'd be getting a benefit relative to those in front of you.
And you'll see some people using their power-ups in the sprint the sprint competition, the sprint point midpoint of the race where there were points on offer.
Yeah.
People used it there because they were all in for those points. Right?
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. There's only one. Yes, they do try to level the playing field. If you just hop into a random Zwift race, it might be each power. It might be random luck as to which one you get. But for these higher level races, they usually just assign or have a fixed power ups where everybody gets the same one at different points. And it's up to you as to how you want to use it.
So you're still hanging on to yours, and your plan is to use it in the sprint. Probably that's where most people are waiting. Oh, there's somebody using theirs right now. Maybe they're about to get dropped or something. They're
yeah, it's probably a little early. They are longer. They're 40 seconds, I think. But we're still 0.7 miles out, so over a kilometer out. So there's still probably like a minute and a half or so left here in the race. So you want to time it so that you're inside 40 seconds from the sprint. And no reason really to use it early unless you're struggling to stay on. But we've got a little bit of a gradual uphill here, 1 or 2% gradient right now. This is different than the last race. I knew that it was going to be a decent effort. I'm doing over 500 watts right now, and I'm just trying to keep pace. I did want to stay in the top 15 or so riders, which looks like, I'm like 12th right now during this lead in, because I suspected that the pace would heat up pretty quickly. And I just wanted to make sure I had could survey what was going on ahead in case anybody tried to move early. And I knew people were going to be falling back just because, 600 watts still it was going to be hot until the end, and it's harder to move up when the pace is already so high. So it looks like now I activated mine. This is where the road flattens off, um, and now I'm just trying to go as hard as I can. My power is not going to be as high as the last race, just because the lead-in was so much harder for so much longer. And you can see my teammate in the Canadian National Championship jersey came around there and ends up winning this race, but ended up finishing seventh, which I was pretty happy with, coming off a fifth in the prior race. And collectively, I finished second, had the second most points through the first two races. So I
So
was
that
pretty
green lights you
thrilled
into
about that.
So that green lights you into the championship race.
That's correct. Yep.
And that's only the top 5, and that was such a spicy race. Let's dive into the championship race next. Brian, hey, it was great having you on as always, man. Congrats on the fantastic result. We're going to work on the next race commentary. That'll be posted to the channel soon. So get subscribed if you haven't already. Thanks, everybody.